Just to break down what Eric said just by statistics, I mean, because I was writing an article just today about how you set a new record from those gun sales in one day, 180,000 guns sold on Black Friday. But, every day is a good day for guns in America. We sell more than 50,000 guns a day. More than half of the guns in the entire world are in the U.S., and we have 4.4% of the world's population. Go ahead, Peter.
Going back to the NRA, first of all, I did a story this week on Latest.com that the NRA successfully has opposed federal attempts to put people who are on the FBI's suspected terrorist list, some of the people on the no-fly list, for example, to prohibit them from buying guns legally. And the NRA defeated that. So you can be on a no-fly list, you can be on the FBI's terrorist lists, and you can go out and purchase a gun legally. That illustrates the absurdity of what the NRA is doing. Second, if there was somehow a lobbying group for terrorists that was as powerful and as well-funded as the NRA, then I suspect you'd see very different laws about terrorism in the United States, just kind of as a thought example. But picking up on something Eric has said, and perhaps others can jump in here too. I'm almost 56 years old, and I live in New York City. I have lived in a number of other urban areas in the United States, Cleveland, which has a very high crime rate. And, in my entire lifespan, the only serious criminal act that's happened to me or any of my family is we had a break-in when we were away from home, and that was like 30 years ago. There's never been a situation in my life where I've had to defend myself using potentially deadly violence. I mean, it just simply hasn't happened. Maybe I've lived a charmed life or whatever, but it hasn't. I haven't been hanging out in small town nowhere where everyone knows each other. I think it's a climate of fear and paranoia that just infects people in the United States. They have this image that they're going to, at any moment, they're going to be, have a shootout that is simply inaccurate, not borne out by reality, but yet fuels the number of guns that enter our society. And in some ways, all that does contribute to the terrible things, the incredible legacy of 10,000 people a year killed by firearms in our country.
Well, and don't forget, too, every time one of these shootings happened, the number one Republican argument, if they had guns, they could have defended themselves.
Right.
So when you have that argument, you have voters or people that are influenced by that thinking. I guess it makes sense why these people turn out to stores, buy guns.
Well, I've been lucky not to have been in a mass shooting myself, so I mean, maybe I'm just biding my time. But
you've been in a war zone.
I've been in an actual war zone, and I didn't get, I actually didn't carry a weapon there, and I managed to do okay. The thing is that I think a lot of it has to do with these myths. I mean, first of all, that you're going to stand up and shoot your way out of these situations. So I did an article on Latest.com this week. Off-duty police officers, through their national organization, want to be able to bring their firearms to NFL games, so that if ISIS, tries to save the Giants from a fourth quarter loss by shooting up the stadium, these guys are going to pop up like cheerleaders, or, among 80,000 fans and start blasting away. At the minimum, think about in a mass shooting situation. First of all, as handguns are only useful out to a fairly short distance. If the shooters have vests, bulletproof vests on or whatever, I mean, that's going to reduce the effectiveness of handguns. You have to sort of know what you're doing. You have to have practice with your weapon and all those other things. But I mean, just imagine more people out of uniform with guns in these situations. I mean, it seems to me the most likely thing that's going to happen is the cops are just going to shoot them too at some point.
Yeah, because they're going to get confused, of course, right, with other people pulling out guns and shooting. It's just going to create it. I fully agree.
Josh, did you want to jump in?
Well, I mean, I was also in a war zone, and I did carry a weapon that I never used. So, but I mean, as heavy as it was, I was always kind of glad to have it. Now, like Peter said, in the Army, it's training. Like there's no way to know if anything had ever happened and I was called upon to draw on that combat arms training, if I would have been, Tom Hanks or that weepy weasel guy from Saving Private Ryan. There's no way to know until you're in the moment. But I do know that, if I did engage, I'm sure I would have called on my training, So I think if you have training and you're armed, I mean, it's certainly better than not having training and being armed. So, when it's off-duty cops trying to, to carry off-duty, I mean, the cop thing, I did a piece this week about how, police are trained awfully. If it's in Florida, you have to pay for your own training, so you're getting to be great. So would I feel good with Florida cops carrying in an NFL stadium? Probably not. But if it was a police force where they're, trained with their weapons and also trained to know when not to use them, maybe I would feel safer. It's because that's the thing about guns is even though we know that in a real shootout we would not be the hero, you still feel safer sometimes thinking of cops showing up with guns. So I don't know, it's a very sort of heavy presence in the American culture and the American psyche, sort of like Eric was saying. I don't own a gun. I don't want to own a gun. But at the same time, I do feel comforted that if I ever did, I could. So I sort of get the other side of it. Now, if you're talking about gun owners, the exact same gun control reforms as President Obama. It's the NRA and the people who, the media that's beholden to them and the politicians that are beholden to them that don't want any kind of gun control.